necessarily prescriptive in terms of the innovations that you could have, you know, floor to ceiling windows if it's still performing at a certain energy performance level. So, you know, if you're going to do then you have to put in triple pane or innovate in some other way in order to reach those performances. Now, whether or not the performance is aggressive enough.
I think you're half right there. It is performance based, and we do like that because you get to pick which is the best way.
Yeah.
But because of the metrics they picked,
yeah.
One of them is thermal energy demand.
Right.
So that is going to drive basically a heavy envelope solution.
Yeah.
And for instance, because of political reasons, the province basically wasn't going to make carbon the actual target. City of Vancouver, carbon's a target. Mm-hmm. You know, we want to have low carbon buildings because they have their own building code. So for the province, for whatever reason, they did not pick carbon as it. So you're right that there is innovation allowed, and we prefer performance targets, but it is limited because it's a TEDI target.
Yeah, so the way I look at it from an optimization perspective is that thermal energy target forces you to optimize the building system to deliver that particular target, but it doesn't allow for renewable energy production. It doesn't consider that if you actually had a district energy system that was viable, you still have to hit that thermal energy target. So one of the crazy things is that if you're in a situation where it would otherwise make sense to do district energy because there was enough demand for the buildings, now you have to take the building demand right down, and now your district energy system isn't viable anymore. So maybe you're stuck with a different energy source. So the point, I think, is good that it's a performance-based thing. Within that envelope, it allows you to innovate and show great leadership. And municipalities can show leadership by adopting one of the higher steps right out the gate if they think that that's a good idea. Probably they're not going to because it's a bit early for that, but they could. But I think the issue is the optimization across those other values and other goals.
And we've made the province aware, like the building code is going to have, because the idea of the energy step code is it's a precursor to the building code. So the building code will eventually adopt the energy step code. So the province is going to have an issue when we start getting energy step code 4, which is near zero buildings, near zero energy buildings. What do you do in a district energy area? Because you're really going to be able to build a whole bunch of pipes to buildings that don't need energy. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So they are aware of it, and I think they are going to have to build some flexibility in it.
Okay, thank you. You guys, please stay here, but let's just thank the panel very much. That we have remaining, we just wanted to open it up, and particularly from the quieter voices, those who've been taking notes studiously all day, if there are thoughts, reflections, what do you think of that crazy jumble of concepts back there?
That hasn't changed.
This is your chance to air your anxieties as they have built throughout the day. My anxieties have built throughout the day. Yes.
Okay, so my first question, it kind of adds up to the presentation that really Peter had earlier. You said that you went into a neighborhood and talked about different strategies and never used the term resilience or sustainability. So what I'm curious about is resilience in the way municipalities use it to have climate adaptation strategies. Is it just like a different word that you use because maybe sustainability didn't work really good, or is it like, because I have a feeling it's also marketing.
Yeah.
You want to brand your city with either sustainability or resilience. And in our research project, we found out that the different municipalities in this area just work differently with the term resilience. So it's not on for you, but
yeah, sure. Well, I'll answer first, and then I was just going to add. I'm sure you've got some thoughts. The first thing in general is to say that in the 1970s there was a thing called the Healthy Cities Framework, and then in the late 80s into the 90s there were Sustainable Cities Frameworks, and then more recently the Resilient Cities Frameworks. And if you put them up side by side, 95% of what's in them is the same stuff. In fact, in the early 1970s in Ontario, there was a little project called Erin Mills, which is now a town of 250,000 or something, I happen to have got out of this archives at UBC a marketing pamphlet for that. And aside from the fact that it's in 1970s watercolors with rainbows and stuff, the language in there about what they were selling, which was large malls with big streets and industrial parks and single-family houses and apartments, all sort of separated, is the same language that planning profession is using today to talk about smart growth, sustainability, and resilience, with a few exceptions. So, yeah, it's a little bit about marketing, but yeah, it's also about not clearly defining what it is that we're actually trying to achieve. And I'm kind of getting a skid about sustainability because I think we don't actually understand what it means as a general rule. I think it actually is meaningful, and it's a way of getting through some of those conversations. So yeah, it's about marketing and the terminology. The second thing specifically, though, is about Valley View. So this is a town of about 2,000. It is located 3 hours northwest of Edmonton, so it's in oil and gas country. 50% of the employees in the town, I would say, work in the oil and gas industry, and by that I mean they're out on the drill rigs, they're driving around in big trucks, they're working in a refinery, that kind of thing. So to walk into a community like that and say, we need to deal with climate change is akin to saying, you need to stop working and doing what you're doing what you've believed in for your entire life, and listen to a guy from Vancouver, right? So yeah, I didn't mention the words climate change. But at the same time, I can come in and I can say, well, the oil and gas industry has gone through some really big highs and lows, from $150 to $200 a barrel down to $30 a barrel in the last 10 years. That's not really good for you being sure that you're going to have a job in 5 years. So that's language they understand. So I can talk to them about optimizing things and say, yeah, well, Joe wants this, Marla wants that, and Josephine wants that, and we're looking for a solution that meets everybody's interests. They get that. So I don't need to use the term sustainability. And I can also say, well, Edmonton had a tornado a few years ago, and you guys had a massive snowfall last year in May, I'm making this up, that caused some major problems. We need to think about extreme weather events and how we manage those. So I can use, we can talk about all of the content with none of the terms. That's really what I'm getting at.
Can I add to that? Yeah, so I've had similar experiences. One working with a small community in the interior called Quesnel. It's a community of about 10,000 people, largely resource-based and relied heavily on the local forestry industry until the mountain pine beetle epidemic really hit hard in the interior and killed off a lot of their pine tree and harvestable wood. And the result of that is that community, as well as others in the interior, they had a lot of mill closures and wind down of mill operations. They had some timber swaps. Generally, their population projection is forecasted to decline, and they don't want to be branded as victims of climate change, because the whole pine beetle epidemic with the pine beetle, its thoughts in the studies is that we've had milder winters, warmer summers, and we haven't been killing off the bug. They don't want to be branded as a climate change victim community. So they've been using the word resilience in terms of how to transition their economy based on predominantly forestry to other types of industries, and they're using the word resilience. And they're also using the word resilience when it comes to housing. They have an aging population, but they aren't generating the population to occupy the homes that the seniors are going to be leaving when they downsize. They don't have that natural population cycle. And so now we're looking at resilient housing forms like secondary suites, which can be brought online when needed, but when the economy and the population isn't supporting the community, they can take them offline without having too much of an impact and oversupply in the community. But it is a total branding thing. They do not want to be known as a victim, but they're using the word resilience. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
It's because they've kind of owned it.
They've owned
and
it,
they've
yeah.
defined it for themselves in a way that's meaningful to them.
That's
and
right.
I think that's critical.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? Lingering questions that we can't answer? Oh, I have so many questions. Steve?
I'll throw one. I live as an area of Vancouver, and there's a fair bit of land consolidation going on where a developer will buy a number of single properties, consolidate them, and do something new. Usually it is for densification. And I wonder if any of you can speak to opportunities to implement resilience through that kind of pretty dramatic change in land use and settlement patterns.
Well, I would say Mount Pleasant, that's a good example because Mount Pleasant is likely going to get a new Broadway line once it's approved, and I hope that's going to happen soon. But I mean, it's the same community that will just go up in arms over 5-story massive towers that are emerging in the local community.
Oh, that was so 10 years ago.
No, I only wish it was. And again, I go back to that whole thing. I mean, we're putting in what's probably going to be taken out all the way to UBC. It's going to be, you know, a $2-3 billion line. I mean, you got to expect there's going to be density around there. And if you're going to do a half measure, then, you know, go back to if you're not going to have planning that's durable, do you build durable buildings? And I know that people are talking, well, we don't have to have super tall buildings. And quite frankly, the industry, it doesn't matter if it's tall buildings or not, but if you're not going to have the tall buildings, you're now going to have to go into wider swaths of the single-family home neighborhoods, which I'm all for. I just don't think the people in the single-family home neighborhoods are for that. And I think, you know, you're gonna have problems basically there as well. And so I think we have to figure out what form of density we need to take. And I don't care if it's Manhattan or if it's Paris, but we're going to have density along that line. And if we're going to do half measures, the building's not going to be there in 50 years, right? So you're going to redevelop it unless you're really going to take it seriously and actually plan for the future. And you're thinking, well, maybe these buildings are actually going to be here for hundreds of years. Then I think you can have that conversation.
I have a question, if I can, for you, Steve. So you're talking about leveraging this kind of redevelopment and densification, whatever the scale or form, to support more resilient communities. What are the characteristics of resilient communities that you think you're going to be able to get through